Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome to today's webinar on ethnic minorities and social enterprise lessons from London. I'm absolutely delighted that we've got Dr. Sara Calvo from Middlesex University Business School here today who's going to be leading the webinar. So in a few moments you will hear Sara's voice and you will see her screen. As ever, we are recording today's webinar and there'll also be the opportunity for you to type in some questions at the end should you have any. We'll be able to send you the recording and the presentation over to you via email as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over the controls to Sara and you should hear her voice shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this, Julie. And good afternoon to everyone. And first of all, thank you for attending this webinar session today about ethnic minorities and social enterprises in London. And as Julie introduced me before, I'm Dr. Sara Calvo, and I will be running the session today about a topic that has actually attracted a lot of attention in recent years in this country. It's about vulnerable and marginalized communities and their involvement in social enterprises. In particular, we're going to look at ethnic minority groups. But before we start with a discussion about this topic, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I'm a lecturer at Middlesex University, and where I teach a wide variety of subjects. Within these subjects, I teach social entrepreneurship, leadership and management, and organizational behavior. I'm also an educator, training and certified social enterprise advisor, and I have completed my PhD about ethnic minorities and social enterprises in the UK. The project that I'm going to talk today about is part of my PhD, and it was funded by the Economic Social Research Council in collaboration with CEDAR, which is a research center at Middlesex University, and the Ethnic Minority Foundation, that is a national charity that supports ethnic minority communities in this country. I have also a wide range of experience supporting social enterprises around the world. I have been doing some work in Africa, Latin America, Asia and Europe. And I'm also one of the founders of Living in Minka, which is a social enterprise that promotes and educates about social enterprises. We deliver courses about social enterprise around the world, and we also work on mini documentaries as well. So just briefly introduce myself. Now I'm going to go on what we're going to be covering today for the session, which is, as I said before, on ethnic minorities and social enterprise.
Sara, sorry to interrupt.
We're going to be looking at
Sara, sorry to interrupt. Can you just share your screen, because I don't think people can see the presentation. There's a button you can press to share the screen. Perfect.
Can they?
Yes.
Is it okay now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, when we look at the presentation outline, what I'm going to show today is, first of all, why it's important to look at ethnic minority social enterprises. Why it's of interest? Is there any interest on this topic? The second part is that what do we know so far about the involvement of ethnic minority communities in social enterprises? Then I will move into my the research project that I've been involved with, looking at the research questions of what we explore, looking at the methodology as well, what we use. I would use a wide range of methods to look at this topic. And also, because I know the audience is a variety of people coming from different sectors. We have some academics, policymakers, and probably practitioners. I'm going to show you examples of successful ethnic minority social enterprises in East London. Okay, I have a couple of examples to show you, and if you are interested, then I can give you further information about them later on. Following this, I will present some of the findings on the more important issues that I come across conducting this research. And finally, I will summarize some of the findings with a concluding remarks, with some conclusions. After that, we will have time for questions, so I hope you have some questions to ask me. So why is ethnic minority social enterprise activity of interest? We could actually say that the social enterprise sector is at the moment at the center of current political and academic debate in the UK. This has been happening since particularly 1997 with the New Labour, and it's actually continuing with the current government, the coalition government at the moment. What they have seen is that they have claimed that social enterprise can offer opportunities for those people who are not included. Also provide engagement in political activism, and also quality public sector service provision. There are some services that have been proven not being actually covered by the public sector, so social enterprises are there to provide some opportunities. However, there is a lack of agreement about what exactly social enterprise is or does. Okay? So before we start talking about ethnic minorities, I want to briefly introduce what social enterprise is and how can we understand social enterprise. Just to briefly summarize, it's basically organizations that trade for social or environmental purposes. But if you look at the slide, I have included the UK government definition of how they define social enterprise. And as you see in the quote, it's a business with primarily social objectives whose surpluses are reinvested in the business or in the community, yeah, rather than being driven to maximize profits for shareholders. This is the definition the UK government used to define social enterprises at the moment. Okay, but when we look at ethnic minority social enterprises, we could actually argue that there is little known about the extent and nature of their engagement and involvement with social enterprise activity. There have been some research conducted about this topic, but they have been quite general and basically more policy-oriented and green materials. I have a couple of examples here on the slides that I want to show you. The first one is Olmec. There was a study conducted by Olmec in 2007 about ethnic minority social enterprises. Another one was done by the Greater Local Authority in 2007 as well. So yeah, there has been some support and there has been some research, and the evidence showed that there are formal and also informal ethnic minority social enterprises in the UK and also in London. However, we could say that some people have accused the social enterprise movement in the UK as being largely a white middle class affair that has actually failed to tap into the activity of non-white populations, and that have left black and ethnic minority communities on the margins of the social enterprise movement.
Hello, we seem to have lost Sara for some reason. If you could just hold on the line, we'll see if we can get her back. Just a second, thank you.
Hello?
Hi, Sara.
Hello?
Yes, hi, Sara. You're back on. I think you just slipped off for a second, but you're back on and in control. So back over to you.
Okay. Let me know when can I continue with my...
Yeah, you're absolutely fine to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I hope it's not gonna happen again. So yeah, what I was actually saying, another point that I wanna take into consideration, moving to PowerPoint slide 5, just to follow from this problem we have now, is the fact that in recent years there has been a change in race relations and equality policies. We could talk about the change from multiculturalism to integrationist policies. So if we look at the multiculturalist approach that actually emerged after the Brixton civil disorders in 1981, and this continued with the celebration of what we know as the Ethnic and Cultural Diversity Festival that we have every year, has actually moved now into integrationist policies. This has been a consequence of the high rates of immigration that we have had in recent years in this country, but also with civil disturbances and terrorist attacks that have moved the emphasis towards integration and community cohesion. This has had an important influence in the development of ethnic minority organizations in the country. One of the consequences is that ethnic minority organizations are now required to stress not their differences in terms of single group identities. I give you an example. with charities or with social enterprises that are focused on particular ethnic minority communities, such as the Somali community, the Bangladeshi community, but they are actually focusing on their ability to integrate them with other communities. This is all related with funding opportunities. So what is happening now is that the government is not giving funding anymore to organizations that are focused on particular ethnic communities, but for the ones that are able to integrate with other ethnic minority communities. So that is where we move into community cohesion strategy and policies. There is also a reduction of public sector opportunities for mainstream third sector organizations, but also affects and influence ethnic minority communities as well. And interestingly as well, there have been a move from funding to public sector providers. So ethnic minority organizations and third sector in general are actually don't have any more opportunities in terms of funding, or less opportunities on funding, but they have actually more into public service providers bidding for contract opportunities. So based on this was kind of an introduction on what is going on at the moment, what is the evidence, and where we're moving in terms of the policy orientation on this topic. When I move into the research I conducted, we have three main questions that I'm going to respond today and are based on the research that I did. And they are the following. The first one, what are the difficulties involved in measuring and defining ethnic minority social enterprises? The second one, is there any evidence about ethnic minority organizations moving towards or adopting the social enterprise model? Are ethnic minority third sector organizations, what we consider the charities, moving towards adopting social enterprise forms? And the final question is about to what extent, what is the extent and nature of these organization engagements with wider policy process? What is the role of the political environment? What is the political environment? What is influencing? How is influencing these organizations? In answering these questions, I conducted a wide range of different methods with empirical material that was focused in East London. Okay? And based on this was a mixed methods approach that I used a wide range of methods, as I said before. The first thing that I used was secondary data sources. So I look at first of all, the East London area, looking at the historic, socioeconomic, and political context of this particular area. Also exploring the nature of ethnic minority organizations, not only looking at ethnic minority third sector. Third sector, I will say, when I talk about ethnic minority third sector organizations, I refer to social enterprises and charities. But also I was looking at ethnic minority businesses as well. And I created a database of 1,500 organizations in the area. This was done in collaboration with the Ethnic Minority Foundation that I mentioned before. I also conducted a telephone survey with 200 questionnaires were completed with ethnic minority social enterprises. And based on these questionnaires, I selected the 10 case examples. So I was looking into a little bit more in depth 10 ethnic minority social enterprises in this area. I did some interviews with the leaders, with directors, with the employees, service users. I also took a while to observe their organizations, how they were working, how they operated, and look at documentary resources such as the company reports. But not only that, I also thought it would be interesting to look at the views from policymakers, practitioners, and also academics that are interested on this topic and they have something to say about that. So I interviewed 16 stakeholders, mainly policymakers, experts on social enterprise, but also ethnic minority. The reason why the study was focused in East London is because I found the area is interesting. It's one of the most ethnically diverse population in the UK. We have, in this particular area, we have 42% of the population from ethnic minority communities, which is a considerable amount. It's one of the most deprived areas in the UK. And also, it has a long tradition of active ethnic minority organizations, including for-profit companies, but also charities and social enterprises. And finally, it was an interesting location because it was actually the 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And my research was also exploring the involvement of ethnic minority social enterprises in the contract process of the Olympic Games. So I will look at this later. I will show you some of the findings as well. Before we move into that, because as I said before, we have people from with different backgrounds here. I want to show you examples of a couple of examples of based on my research of successful ethnic minority social enterprises in East London. Okay, the first one maybe you are familiar with. I mean, it's called Community Food Enterprise, and it's basically a food cooperative that was set up by Eric Samuel in 2012. In Newham. The focus of this organization was concerned with food poverty. And so what they do with the organization, they supply fresh fruit and vegetables to companies. And what they do is they reinvest the money they make by selling these fruits and vegetables to company to their charitable aims, which is basically to provide fresh food and vegetables at affordable prices and to educate people about healthy food in areas that are classified as deprived areas, as food desert areas as well. Okay, so the organization is actually based in Newham, but is focusing on working across East London and also moving now to other areas of London as well. It is a very successful organization. I will really invite you I will definitely invite you to explore a little bit more about Community Food Enterprise, to look at the website, because they have done interesting things. For example, they have worked with different schools, promoting healthy food in schools around the areas. Another example is, the name is Apasent, which is a social enterprise established in Tower Hamlets in 1984 by a group of Bangladeshi parents to improve the conditions of their disabled children. So basically the organization has moved from a parents association to a social enterprise that provides a wide range of services for disabled people. An example of this is a cafe they have within one of the locations in Tower Hamlets, and they provide opportunities, employment opportunities for disabled people in the area. They started in Tower Hamlets, and now they're moving to look at other local communities as well, and not only focusing on the Bangladeshi community, but also with other ethnic minority groups as well. Okay, so these are the two examples, and as I said before, have a look at them, have a look at the website and the work they are doing. Now I'm going to move into the main findings on the study that I conducted. The first theme that emerged from the findings is the problem with defining and mapping ethnic minority social enterprises in London. There have been some studies conducted about the number of social enterprises, the nature of extent of ethnic minority social enterprises in London, and we could say that there are between 3,300 and 5,000 organizations in the city. However, the studies that have been conducted on mapping these organizations are using different definitions. Okay, I give you examples with Olmec. The definitions they use, where they conducted the study, they focus on ethnic minority third sector organizations. On the other hand, with GLA, they focus on private sector employees. Yeah? So you could say that there is a problem with definitions on ethnic minority social enterprise. I'm going to explore this a little bit more. Also, what we realize is that there is a mismatch between the official government definitions on ethnic minority social enterprise and also the ones that are held by their organizations and people that are running these organizations. While the government is using the definitions focusing on ownership and management, so basically they define ethnic minority social enterprises as those organizations that are owned by the majority of the members that are from ethnic minority backgrounds, or that the management team is from an ethnic minority background. Well, you look at this with ethnic minority stakeholders, with people who are running these organizations, they say, actually, we don't focus on that, we focus more on the beneficiaries. If the impact is actually influencing, affecting ethnic minority communities, then we are an ethnic minority social enterprise. So we see there is a mismatch between the definitions. Another interesting issue is the problem with invisibility of ethnic minority social enterprises. This is something, it's not new with ethnic minority third sector organization. There is a problem of informality, of being unregistered, below the radar, and this is something that we can also observe with social enterprises. So they have a problem with lack of legal status, they are informally based. An example in this survey, we have 11% of the sample out of 200 organizations that lacked legal status and operated therefore informally. The second part that I wanted to talk about today in terms of what we found interesting about this topic is the problem of there is evidence of transition towards the social enterprise model. Just to briefly explain, is the problem of there are a lot of ethnic minority third sector organizations that were previously charities that are moving towards the social enterprise model. Some of the reasons behind are because there's a reduction of funding opportunities, because local authorities are moving from funding to contracts, and so on. So based on on our survey, we could say that 4% stated that although they were engaged with trading activities, they were also receiving grants and donations, okay? So we see a high percentage of social enterprises that obviously they consider themselves social enterprise, but they still have a grant-seeking mentality. They're still thinking about getting funding and donations. In terms of the legal status, we could say that, well, 44% were actually registered charities, and 33% were registered charities and company limit by guaranteed. Most of them were first registered charity, and when they move into the social enterprise model, they realize that if they want to look into trading in a more freedom way, they need to be registered as company limit by guarantee. So that's the reason why they did. So they explained this a little bit more. Only 6% were company interest, community interest companies, which is basically a legal structure that was introduced by the government in 2005, just in case you are not familiar with this terminology. And the KICs basically are delivering services under contract agreements, and they have fewer regulations than charities, so that's why the government was thinking this could actually be introduced for those ones who want to just focus on social enterprises. Also, what we realize is that of a wide range of organizations that we interview and we conducted the survey, there is a limited understanding of the term social enterprise, sometimes a degree of confusion. I give you an example with one of the organizations we interviewed, the director. He said, like, we've been actually trading for many years. We are a charity, but now we have to say that we are a social enterprise. So there is still a lack of understanding, degree of confusion about whether they are or they are not social enterprise. The final part of the findings that we thought was interesting is about the engagement of ethnic minority social enterprises with the policy process. As we said before, there have been some people that have argued that that social enterprise movement in the UK has been primarily a white middle class approach or movement. So we wanted to explore this a little bit more. And some of the findings are basically that there is a little engagement of these organizations with Main Street services, such as Go.uk. But they mainly rely on locally based organizations, such as Olmec, Unlimited, the Black Training and Enterprise Groups, were the organizations that they mention when they talk about how they actually approach organizations. They didn't go to Main Street services. In terms of the local authority support, there is a variety of responses, and this really depends on the boroughs that we were talking about. And when we think about the East London, we were actually focusing on a study in the 5 Olympic boroughs, And between them, there were different opinions. For example, Tower Hamlets local authority was considered as being quite supportive of ethnic minority social enterprises, whilst Newham wasn't considered that supportive. There is also, and this is based on the research on the Olympic and Paralympic Games, there was very little engagement with the Games. Only 4% of the organizations that we collected in the survey, they were acting as consultants or secondaries of contracting participating in the Olympic and Paralympic Games. So this is kind of, and the interesting thing is that they were all based in East London, so you will think about the importance of them being involved, because there was also a lot of discussion about this. So we can say that there is a disengagement between the political discourse and what is happening on the ground, and this is also based on the definitions. They have different definitions and different interpretations of what is happening. So within the current climate, we could argue that ethnic minority social enterprises, some of them, especially the small ones, will be unable to survive. Why we are arguing this is because there's a lot of more competition for contract opportunities, there's less funding available, and there is lack of support or less support than it used to be in the late 90s. Okay, so just to summarize some of the main ideas we've been discussing today in this webinar, that this study has actually demonstrated that there are problems with definitions, measuring and demarcating the ethnic minority social enterprise sector in London and in the UK, because we have problems with the terminology of social enterprise, but also on ethnicity, what we consider as an ethnic minority group as well. There are a large number of organizations that are moving, particularly charities, moving and reinventing themselves to become towards the social enterprise model, increasing their trading activities as well. Another interesting point is that the social enterprise activity has been reduced in practice to a particular arena for action. So it's basically the promotion has been only focused on delivering public services, moving for contract opportunities with local authorities. And finally, we could argue again, we mentioned this at the beginning of the findings, that the current discourse, the political discourse, provides little scope for the engagement of these small ethnic minority organizations. I would like to finish this presentation with a quote from an organization that supports minority-related social enterprise, and it's called Diversity in Social Enterprises. Maybe you are familiar with them. And they say, diversity in social enterprise is all about inclusion. It is crucial to highlight the diversity of the people, the goods and services, and the creativity in this sector for the benefit of engagement, celebration, and networking across the UK and beyond. So thank you very much for listening. And before I leave you some time for questions, I just want to say that I have published 2 articles on this topic. If you are interested, there is a reference list at the end with 2 of the articles. One is about social enterprises and ethnic minorities looking at the British policy agenda, and the other one is more focusing into the contract opportunities of ethnic minority organizations and the Olympic Games. So if you are interested, you can look at the articles. You can email me if you cannot find them available. Thank you very much, and I will invite you for questions that you may have.
Thank you, Sara. No, that was really, really interesting. So thank you very much for sharing all your research findings with us. So for anybody listening, and if you do have any questions, if you'd like to type them in the questions pane, we can hang on for a few minutes to see if there's anything particular you'd like to ask Sara while we've got her on. Whilst you do that, just to remind you that we have recorded today's webinar, and I'll be able to send out the link with the recording and also the slides to you via email either later today or tomorrow. The next webinar in the Unlimited series is next Wednesday, the 7th of May, and the topic is income generation, and that will be delivered by Richard Dickens from Make It Happen Consultancy, and again it will be run from between 12 and 1 o'clock. So if you haven't registered already, I'll send out the link to you today along with the information from today's webinar. Doesn't seem that anybody's got any particular questions at the moment, Sara. I'll just give them a couple more minutes, but if you do think of anything after we end today's webinar, please drop me an email which I can forward on to Sara if there's anything in particular that you would that you'd be interested in. Oh, we do have a couple of questions now, which is great. So first question, Sara, in your studies, did you look at how EMSEs engagement with particular ethnic groups are successful? And if so, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Did you look at?
Yeah, sorry. Did you look at how any EMSEs engagement with particular ethnic groups are successful?
Oh yeah. Okay, that's a really interesting question. And yeah, we look at particular different communities and their engagement and involvement with social enterprises, and we realize, particularly, I'm going to focus on East London because that was the area that I was mainly talking today. And the interesting thing is that well-established ethnic minority communities, when we talk about well-established ethnic minority communities, we could talk about the Black and Asian communities, were more involved with social enterprise than the new arrivals. The new arrivals we could consider, for example, the Eastern European communities, the Latin American communities. One of the reasons of this was because there is more support available for well-established communities. They have been there for a long time, obviously, and they have a wide range of organizations already established as charities, and therefore it's easy for them to move to social enterprise. We have also observed new social enterprises emerging from new communities, but if we look at the percentage, I will say that the majority of organizations are actually looking at the well-established communities. If we look at East London, I would say the Bangladeshi communities, for example, the Black African Caribbean communities are highly recognized as being very significant in East London.
Great, thanks, Sara. We do have another question here, which is, obviously you've talked a lot about London and that's where you've done all your research, but are you looking to expand the geographical area and look at other areas either here in the UK or in other countries?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm actually conducting several research about this topic in other countries. I'm interested to look at what is happening with ethnic minority social enterprises, particularly in Mediterranean countries, for example, in Italy, Spain, because there is a considerable number of ethnic minority communities there. So we'll be look at a comparative study between, let's say, the UK and Italy or Spain. Yeah. So I'm looking at that. Also a topic that I didn't talk about this today, and I think is also a really interesting topic that I'm looking at the moment at, is about faith-based organizations. So we could say that I'm exploring, or I'm going to start to explore the importance of the involvement of faith-based social enterprises. What is there any connection of I don't know, different religions with social enterprises? What is the important value of faith in the role of social enterprise initiatives? So this is something that I'm actually looking at, and there is a lack of research about the topic at the moment. So I think this is something that I'm interested in at the moment, on faith-based social enterprises as well.
Okay, well we look forward to hearing and seeing your findings if you do some research on faith-based organisations. That would be really good. I don't think we've got any more questions at this stage, but if we get any more via the email, I'll send them over to you. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening, but huge thank you, Sara, to you for sharing your findings and research with us. It was really, really interesting, and look forward to hearing more from Middlesex University. We've got some more webinars coming up from some of your colleagues as part of our Unlimited series. So thank you to you, thank you to everybody listening. Like I said, the next webinar is next Wednesday, the 7th of May, on income generation, so I hope that people can join us for that. and I will forward you the recording and presentation shortly. But I hope everybody has a good day, and thanks everybody, and we'll speak again soon.